Joyce beating Takam.
Shows enough flaws in your fighter, but he won't expose them enough to beat him.
On September 25th, it has now been announced, the AJ vs Usyk fight.
But I don't trust AJ's chin at all.
I want to see the best fight the best, and it never seems to happen whilst one of the best is on a different promotional company, or a different TV network, or a different management, whatever it is.
I would do it in boxing. Fully shorter fights, I would do it constantly.
This week we have Crawford vs Porter ordered by the WBO.
It's a fight where we get a lot of answers about Crawford as well.
Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxer podcast. Welcome back to Mouthpiece. I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie the Magic Man Malignaggi.
As always, remember, like, comment, subscribe, send us your videos, leave comments, all of that kind of stuff. Let's get straight onto the weekend review. And we had Joyce beating Takam by a 6th round stoppage. What do you make of the fight, Paulie?
Kos Takom is always a guy who is durable. He'll earn his money, literally in every way. Like he'll make your guy work just enough, but he'll probably not beat him. You know, so it'll give the fans a good show. He'll entertain. He'll try. He'll make a fight of it. But typically, what I notice about Takom is he just always comes up a bit short in these situations. So he never quite gets that win that he needs to kind of make him a little bit more than what he is, sort of a gatekeeper, you know?
Yeah.
But everybody goes home happy because they're entertained, because he does give it a go. And he never beats the guy. He never beats the home guy, you know? So,
yeah.
So the home fight. So
he'll always get booked. He will always get booked.
Yeah. So he's kind of perfect to keep using, but I do think he's got to probably get a win eventually. Otherwise, you start to lose your luster, your value. But I thought it was a good fight. You know, he's also the kind of guy. You know, he shows enough flaws in your fighter, in your prospect, in your contender, but he won't expose them enough to beat him. He'll just expose them enough just to show them, and maybe he can go back and work on them. So he's kind of a perfect opposition in that way, and on so many levels.
Did we learn anything new about Joyce? I feel like everyone knows that he's persistent. We know he's big, strong. We know he's not the easiest on the eye. He can look slow, but he's super effective and seems to have the most basic but effective style of boxing.
Yeah, he's a juggernaut in living up to his nickname. I mean, he'll take it to you. He'll fight you, despite getting hit a bit too cleanly for my liking. You know, I think that can hurt him against some heavier punchers. But up until now, he's been a juggernaut in that way. Where even when he's been hit, I think the 𝘰𝘮𝘮𝘪𝘮𝘮𝘮 fight was a kind of they kind of gave it a little bit of a go as well. I remember, he's always there and he's always kind of walking you down and in that juggernaut kind of fashion. You know, he's got a heavy jab, so I think that always works for him. I'd like to see some things out of him, like a bit of more head movement. He seems susceptible to that left hook, right hand combination. You know, like when you come around the side and then bring something down the middle. The commentators were so busy rooting for Joyce that they weren't actually bringing up anything worthwhile, and that was kind of a shame because there were things that I would have liked to see. First of all, yes, he's susceptible to these shots. He gets hit with them pretty consistently. But he keeps walking his man down. No harm done in this case or in some other cases we've seen. But there could be situations where, you fight an AJ and you get hit with a hook right hand. You're probably going to feel it a bit more, Yeah. But nonetheless, also there were things Takom could have shown to be a bit different. You don't just want to kind of root for your man home. I mean, even if you're rooting for a guy in your mind, you don't want to make it so obvious that you're rooting your boy home. Like there were things that Takom was doing or maybe should have been doing. You don't want to just focus on Joyce. So for me, for example, I wanted to see Takom jab a little bit more. He wasn't jabbing that much. Like he was just kind of coming into range. I mean, don't get me wrong. When he did get into range, he was pretty effective at times. With those loopy
body
shots.
Yeah.
But mix it up a little bit. Use that jab and then use loopy shots. I don't know. It was things that I think Takom could have done to make it even more difficult for Joyce. He made it a little bit difficult for Joyce, but like I said, just enough to where he couldn't get over the hump and beat him. Joyce also did some things well. It's not just all criticism. I mean, he goes to the body very well. He's got a heavy jab, consistent jab, unlike Takom. It's a consistent jab, and it backs you up. It backs you up. The jab backs you up, and then he's able to I like the finish. The finish I thought was calm and consistent. Takam could argue, but you can't not throw a punch for 90 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever. I don't buy that. I don't buy that when guys do that and then they get mad the referee stops it. I don't buy into that. I really feel like that's just they're sort of quitting without quitting, and then they want to make it look like they didn't quit. He
was out on his legs.
Yeah. Plus, everybody and their mothers knows if you don't throw a punch for that long of a period of time, and the guy's just throwing punches, whether they're landing or not. If you're not responsive in an offensive fashion, and the guy's shooting a complete assault at you, the referee's gonna stop the fight. I mean, it's common sense. You know that, I know that, everybody knows that. So, and the fighter knows that too. So I don't buy into the controversial stoppage routine just because, you can't go 30, 40 seconds and then not throw a punch back. It was a good amount of time once Joyce hurt him at the beginning of that round. Which is a nice 1-2-3, by the way. It came out and really threw
very
it
nice.
Smoothly, You can't just not throw punches the rest of the round or throw one punch in the next round when in the next 30 seconds when the guy's throwing about 40 or 50 to finish you off. Whether they land or not, you can't do that. You got to show the ref you're responsive. He's not in your head. He's trying to understand how qualified you are to keep continuing. And so I don't have a problem with that stoppage.
Where next for Joe Joyce? He's beaten Takam, which is kind of the gatekeeper. Beyond that, where does he go? Does he go after someone like a 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘮? Does he sit on his hands and wait whilst he's the...
I noticed, speaking of 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘮, I saw 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘮 was talking about him. He was saying, Takam was winning before the stoppage. He was talking a lot, saying, talking some trash. But 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘮 is also very blunt. I wouldn't even necessarily call it trash. Sometimes I just think 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘮 just speaks what he wants to speak, and that's it. Sometimes people may take it as trash, but I think it's probably just his genuine opinion, But I wouldn't mind seeing a 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘮 in the meantime. I think Sam Jones posted that Joyce is now number 1 in WBO.
Yeah.
So it could be AJ, but he's number 1 because the number 1 contender is fighting AJ right now. So that's why you're number 1, because the current number 1 is now no longer the mandatory because the fight is made. And that's Usyk. So we'll see how Usyk and AJ go. But I don't think that AJ is going to be due for a WBO mandatory for a while after he's fighting Usyk. So it would probably. I mean, that's not to say it won't get made faster, because an all British fight is still good for TV. But I do think if Fury beats Wilder, which most people expect that to happen, and AJ beats Usyk, which despite Usyk's talent, I think most people expect AJ to win. I'm finding myself thinking it's going to be Fury and AJ. So I don't know that Joyce manages to get AJ right away. Depending on how Usyk looks against AJ, maybe you fight Usyk. Maybe you fight 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘮, then Usyk. Who knows? There's definitely not a shortage of options for Joyce. I think Joyce is good TV. He's entertaining. Sometimes he's a little bit stiff and there's things to complain about. But sometimes, our fighters that are a little bit not perfect, they're not perfect, flaws make fighters exciting. Flaws make fighters exciting. So Joyce can be a guy who can be exciting nonetheless. And I think he's not going to have a problem getting fights.
Right. Have you been watching much of the Olympic boxing? I'll be honest, and I'll say I've only caught a couple of the fights because they've seemed to have moved everything around, and you've got to watch it on an app.
That's the thing about here too. It's hard to keep up with the Olympics because you don't know what to watch, where, at what time.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I'm going to give you a recap then. Let's go over what has happened thus far. In the women's featherweight at 57 kg, we've had Artingstall, who beat Kenosi from Botswana. Big her up, because my mum's from Botswana, and I did not even know they sent a single boxer to this tournament. Crazy. You've got McGrail, who went out. He lost a unanimous points decision. We had Ben Whittaker, who won on a split decision. He's through to the next round. Charlie Davidson, who looked very good actually. That's one of the fights I did catch. And she beat Rabab Cheddar from Morocco. Then in the men's lightweight at 63 kg, you had Luke McCormack, who won a split decision against Kaushik from India. Men's flyweight, Galal Yafai was the only Brit so far to have forced a stoppage against Sogomonyan. I hope I've got that right. That is a long name. He's an Armenian. And then in the round of 16, we had Karis Artingstall beating Romeu from Brazil as well. So it's been a good start for the Brits so far. I think there won't be many of them that's fought anyone that you've got to fear just yet, apart from McGrail. So yeah, look, if you're not keeping up with it, I know it's hard, but try somehow to watch some of it. Somehow, I just end up catching highlights, and sometimes I'm lucky enough when a fight
maybe from YouTube
on.
Or something we can catch them even afterwards. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably the best way. Going from Olympic stars to 2 former Olympic champions. On September 25th, it has now been announced the AJ versus Usyk fight. I feel like we've known for a while that this was going to happen ever since the Wilder and Fury fight got announced. What are you expecting from this fight? Any potential banana skins? We know Usyk's dangerous. How dangerous? What do you see?
I mean, I think Usyk is definitely a potential banana skin, but at first glance, you think AJ's too big, too strong, right?
Yeah.
People are going to tell you, oh, Usyk's about 6'3", he's not small. Yeah, I get it, but physically, he's not been a heavyweight, and he still comes off small as a heavyweight, even I remember early in the Chisora fight, he was kind of getting pushed back a lot. I do think that, he's got very good talent, very good skills. I'm curious to see, how he approaches this fight with AJ. He's got probably better mobility than AJ. But AJ's not, AJ's a veteran at this point. You know what I'm saying? AJ's a veteran at this point, and he knows how to get to you, put the combinations together, and he can hurt you. I'm not sure that. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to misstate this because I don't trust AJ's chin at all. But I don't know that Usyk has the power to completely get the respect of AJ at this weight class. But don't get me wrong. I mean, AJ has shown some flaws in his chin to where he probably needs to respect everybody's punching power. But I don't know. Sometimes Usyk is not the biggest puncher. A lot of times because he's not planted when he throws his shots. He's kind of on the move when he's throwing shots.
It's not his game. It's not his game.
Yeah,
his game is
technical. Very technical.
Is obviously. And is he a fighter that can mentally wear you down pretty fast? Everyone seems to look decent-ish against Usyk for the first few rounds until you realise this guy's just fiddling around. There's always movements, always something to worry about.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, Dan. You're 100% right. But the thing is, I think the bigger guys will force you to move more. I feel like AJ will force. There's great movement in Usyk, but when you overmove, you kind of wear yourself out. You get tired. You get fatigued. And I feel like a guy like AJ can force that in Usyk, even if it costs him a few rounds.
Yeah.
It just, and then if you wear down Usyk in that way, even if Usyk is maybe if Usyk is nicking some of the rounds, it's not gonna matter. I mean, it'll matter. It'll be fodder for the critics, like, oh, he was losing, or he might, Usyk took some rounds from him.
Yeah.
I do expect Usyk to win some rounds because of this, but I think at the end of the day, I think it's a tough ask. It's a tough ask of Usyk, very deserving nonetheless. It's a tough ask. I'd probably pick AJ, but I expect Usyk to be able to nick some of those rounds just on the technique, foot speed, and whatnot until AJ is finally able to kind of reach him.
I'm like you. I think AJ is gonna do it, but I am obviously here to play devil's advocate, and I just got some questions in general. So, for example, we know what AJ is. And has been throughout his career. He's been a big puncher, almost a search and destroy kind of fighter. He's always had that in his arsenal. He comes after you, and once he thinks he's got you hurt, even just 1% hurt, he's going to try and get you out of there.
Yeah.
However,
even if he gets himself knocked out in the process.
Exactly.
But
we've seen probably a change in that demeanor for the last couple of years. Ever since he got beat by Ruiz, we've seen maybe a more measured, cautious approach to fights, whether it's boxing on the back foot, dancing, not behaving like the bigger man.
And that could be tricky.
That could change this fight.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great point, Dan. That's a good point. Because he's got to be the confident search and destroy guy against a smaller guy. The smaller guy. There was always that saying that a good little man, a good big man always beats a great little man.
Yeah.
right? That you could say Pacquiao changed that dynamic, but nonetheless, I do think that AJ has to show us a bit more of that mean streak that he used to have. Not that he doesn't have it now, but there was like you said, a seek and destroy kind of guy in there before. He's got to have that way about him. The last time he fought a Ukrainian, last time he fought Klitschko, basically, he was not taking no for an answer that night. No matter what, he dropped Klitschko, then Klitschko dropped him, and he roared back and got him out of there. And an amazing fight, and something that really, for me, told me when AJ is wired right, I mean, his mindset can really make him do anything. Which is why the Ruiz fight really shocked me. I always felt Ruiz was very capable. I was actually telling a lot of people not to sleep on Ruiz, but not that because I thought he would beat AJ. That was really shocking to me because of what I'd seen AJ do in the Klitschko fight. So granted, sometimes it's hard to summon the mentality we had of years past. Especially somebody like AJ who's made hundreds of millions since. But nonetheless, I do think you need that hungry, seek and destroy, go-getter kind of guy.
To make Usyk look vulnerable, you need to make him feel vulnerable. If you try and play the chess match with him and do what AJ's been doing against Pulev successfully, and he beat Ruiz of it, you do that against somebody who that is their game.
Yeah, that's how Usyk wins his fights. Usyk wins his fights. You don't want to play into his dynamic. Otherwise, you're basically you're fighting a cruiserweight fight against a cruiserweight.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to do that. You want to show him, you're a heavyweight now. And show him that the challenges he's got to overcome in fighting heavyweights. So we'll see. Very interesting though, nonetheless. A lot of debate. A lot of debates and topics can be discussed based on this fight. But we'll find out.
Who do you think would win in a boxer style final tournament? 3-minute rounds.
That's interesting. Because I do think in 3-minute rounds AJ would just go right at him, right?
Yeah.
So and maybe his size would impose itself on Usyk. But then again, maybe Usyk could run around. You know what it would be? It would depend on the size of the ring. It really would. It would depend on the size of the ring.
Yes, you're right. For me, AJ is the favorite, should win. But to make it easier for himself, I would not be reckless, but certainly make that center of the ring non-negotiable. You go and take it and take the fight to Usyk, but who knows, man? I'm just here on YouTube and AJ's the champion. Going back to the Olympic theme again, we've known about this happening for a while, but they're introducing a new Bridgerweight, which obviously is going to sit somewhere, I'm guessing halfway between cruiserweight and between heavyweight and super heavyweight. I'm guessing.
This isn't the professional?
No, wait. Well, they should have it as the amateurs. In the pros, I'm guessing this goes between cruiserweight and heavyweight.
Yeah. So what do you do? 215?
I think it is. I think it's 102 kg is the limit. I'm not sure what that is. It's around 215.
It's funny because it's funny you mentioned this, Dan, because a few years ago at Wilder versus Ortiz.
Yeah.
Wilder versus Ortiz won. I remember I told Mauricio Solomon, I said, you should make like a 215-pound weight division, because that way the cruiserweights. But I think maybe you also just eliminate the cruiserweight division and make it 215, and you just bridge a bunch of guys together, because you can't have you can't have a 200 and then a 215.
Well, here's the issue. The thing is, that jump even already between light heavyweight and cruiserweight is massive. It's 10 kg in there, or 22 pounds, or whatever it is.
Okay, so if you do that, then you got to make the cruiserweight division back to where it was before, 190 pounds. Because it was 200 pounds, they moved it. If you're going to make a 215-pound weight class, then the cruiserweight division has to go to 190 pounds. You can't just bunch up a bunch of stuff together just to collect sanctioning fees, because that's really what they're doing. They're just about sanctioning fees at that point.
Do you think, it makes a lot of financial sense for them to just make a new weight division. You mean to get more belts, more everything, more bouts. However, that is one of the areas in boxing where I would say perhaps a division is needed. I just think they've put it in the wrong place. I do feel like they've allowed. Sometimes you can get someone who's just made cruiserweight against someone who's boiled all the way from heavyweight down. It's two different weight classes.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I would do it the way I'm saying. Keep cruiserweight back to 190. because you bring from for light heavyweight is 175 pounds, right? So cruiserweight at 190, and then make the new junior heavyweight division 215, right? I remember I told Mauricio Suleiman this.
You started this then. You started.
No, I didn't start this, but I'll tell you what. I remember his answer. That's why I remember his answer at that time was, "You can think about it, but what do you do?" He goes, "Wilder weighed 214 for this fight tonight."
Yeah.
And he's like, and he's big, and I'm like, man, you know, so Wilder just messed up everything, you know. Yeah. So they waited for Wilder to grow out. So now Wilder's like 230, right? And they're like, okay, now we can make it.
It makes sense.
Before Wilder was younger, he was skinnier. He would have been able to make that weight class.
Well, we know that it's going to be introduced in the pros. I'm not sure if it is going to be brought into the amateurs, but for example, the Olympics, we have even bigger ones where, for example, at amateur in kilograms, light heavyweight is 81, cruiserweight is 86, heavyweight is 91, and then I think super heavy is 91 plus. But at Olympic level, there is no cruiser, so you just jump straight from 80 to 91. We need probably a couple of more weight divisions in the Olympics, if anything.
Yeah, but the problem is boxing as an Olympic sport is getting less and less popularity.
Yeah,
and that's why they're forcing the world governing bodies of amateur boxing to diminish weight classes.
Yeah,
so that they can remain as an Olympic sport.
Yeah,
it's a shame, but it's what they've done to themselves.
Well, let's have a look. I'm pretty sure the WBC have put together a top 30 of what could and would be the Bridgerweight rankings, and I'm just going to give you the top 5 so that you understand how much of a lack of depth there may well be in this weight division. Number 1 is Oscar Rivas. Romanov is at number 2. Bryant Jennings at number 3. Rosansky at number 4, and Babic at number 5. So if that's your top 5 at a weight that is going to be introduced, I'm not sure how many of those fighters are even going to want to stay in their own weight division.
Yeah, it's true. You need some depth at. I don't know, man. Again, I'd remove the cruiserweight division and make it 190. I think you'd probably wind up with some cruiserweights at that point that wouldn't be able to make the cruiserweight division anymore, and they'd be fighting at this bridge weight, right? That's what I would do, and then we'll see. Then you might have guys like a 𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘯𝘪 or whatever.
It seems boxing at the moment is just doing whatever it pleases, and new weight divisions, and more belts, sanctioning bodies. Everyone's just doing whatever they want right now. Yeah. If you could do a couple of things that made boxing as a whole better, what would it be? Whether it's promotional companies, weight divisions, would you decrease the weight divisions? Would you decrease the amount of belts?
I'd decrease regional titles for sure. They're useless. You just force guys to fight for them just so you can get into your rankings. It's basically an extortion. Regional. When you say regional belts, are you including things such as the Southern area? Are you in terms of the traditional route? No, I'd say like the domestic titles. Those are cool for domestic level fights. Okay, I'd keep those because those become very partisan for the fans. So you need to keep those for fanfare. But I'm talking about like the WBC International and then Intercontinental and then,
wrestling. It sounds like wrestling.
And then the International Silver title. They'll make a silver title of everything, and then WBA will do the same thing. The interims. I'd eliminate all that because it's basically, again, they're just an extortion, just so you can pay the sanctioning fee and get into the rankings. That's all it is. Literally, it's all it is. It does absolutely nothing for you. Doesn't just because you have one of those belts doesn't mean your paycheck is going to change. I know how professional boxing contracts work. They're stipulated on the major sanctioning body, world championships, major world titles. If you don't have any of those major world titles, your contract does not change. Your minimums on your money, the fights you're fighting, are not change. So the belt do absolutely nothing for you. They're literally just those belts, those regional titles I'm talking about. Not all of them. I would keep the EBU title there. That has a lot of history, things like that. But a lot of them, most of them, they're basically just an extortion. They're an extortion, and basically you're paying them to allow you to fight for this regional title, which means absolutely nothing for your paycheck. But you'll be paying a sanctioning fee to fight for it, and that sanctioning fee you pay essentially gets you into the rankings. So you're basically paying to get into the rankings to get a fight to break you into the rankings. That's really, if you unmask all the BS, that's all it is. That's all it is. And so I would remove that for sure. That's one of the things I'd start.
I don't really have a problem with weight divisions. I have a huge problem with belts, but luckily you've covered that already.
Yeah.
But what I do have a problem is call me old-fashioned, but I want to see the best fight the best, and it never seems to happen whilst one of the best is on a different promotional company or a different TV network or a different management, whatever it is, to the other fighter. There's just too many moving parts. I would love to find a way to get rid of promotional companies. Not like that, because we love Boxer, but I'm saying almost the Cold War element.
It's very difficult, because what you end up having, a world promotional league, right, where everybody can fight everybody. I mean, I think you taking this will be really taking a chance, but it's outside the box thinking. I would almost, because we have a generation that is really short-sighted, and we live in a generation where instant gratification is necessary, and that's all they want because of technology. So because of this, and this is just me thinking out loud. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I would make all fights shorter and tournament style, and have a playoff every year. Like boxer, sort of like boxer. Like a boxer style.
Sounds familiar.
Boxer style, but globally, and this is how. And every year you have your champion, and every year you crown a champion. Every year there's eliminations and whatnot. Sometimes guys are going to get cut, and they're not going to be able to continue in some of these tournaments or whatnot. Yeah. The tournaments can last. I don't know. You can have your prospect tournaments. You can have your contender tournaments, and then your tournament of champions, and it could be like your Champions League, domestic
Champions
level.
League,
and league championship. Actually, the league, and then there's one lower, which is like the bottom, the journeymen who are falling out, and they get a chance to they get relegated to the journeyman, but they have a chance to kind of come up to the contender level if they win the journeyman league. I'm trying to bring domestic league level football rules to boxing, where the most popular sport in the world, in football, and this is the way they keep their fans with a yearly different leagues and relegations and coming up and whatnot. I would do it in boxing, fully shorter fights. I would do it constantly, yearly or bi-yearly, or maybe 18-month wise as a season. And football is going backwards. And you're telling me football's going backwards.
Well, do you know
I had no idea. I mean, I heard this. You see, I brought up. I heard that this was being discussed.
It was caught in the smoke. It was supposed to be, when we were talking about the Super League, the UEFA very quietly released a statement basically saying, "Oh, by the way, we've done something that is very similar to the Super League." But because everyone was in the uproar about the Super League, no one really listened to it. But from 2024, there's a league. There are spots for more privileged teams or teams that do bigger numbers that maybe don't qualify. There's a lot going on. There's a lot happening.
Man, they're just ruining sports day by day. How do they do this?
Money.
You know what's funny?
That's how.
When I was a kid, and we used to talk about Serie A, right? And the Serie A is, basically like the Premiership, like anything else. You have you go by a point system. You know? And Americans would be talking about, they have playoffs in their sports. They have all playoffs. They're not capable of watching. And Italians, we used to make fun of Americans. We used to be like, they don't have the brain capacity to follow a league with no elimination games. You know what I'm saying? It's too complicated for them. It was a way we'd be teasing as Italians to Americans in their sports. And instead, the American way just went to everybody else. Instead of everybody else influencing that style, the simple-mindedness went to everybody else. This is crazy, bro. And I'm sitting here trying to bring the football way to boxing. Meantime, they're going to eliminate it even in football.
I just think leagues are the most honest thing. Like, it's just...
because you have a consistency. You have to be a consistent champion. You can't have a nice night. You have to consistently show your championship medal.
It's true.
Man.
Anyway, look, we're going to find a way to get to the end of this. Boxing is far from a perfect sport, but its flaws are beautiful, but these flaws are beginning to get uglier. I don't know what it is. I'm falling out of love with the sport every time I get bad news, every time there's a robbery, every time. But do you know what? I'm like one of those boyfriends that keeps going back to their missus that does them wrong. I'm gonna be here every time boxing calls me. It's just how it is. That's it. Terrible. I'm still gonna be here, guys, but I'm upset.
Because then they have a wonderful night a wonderful night with a fight that just amazes you. You have that wonderful night with your missus and who does you wrong, and it's just she's amazing and everything's just perfect, and then you're sucked back in. And this is what we get every once in a while we get that amazing fight, and it just sucks us right back in. And when we can't, and we're back to square one with this boxing distorted relationship we have with boxing.
That's it. It's toxic.
Toxic.
All right.
You know boxing fans have toxic relationships too, huh?
It's a toxic relationship, boxing and boxing and everyone, to be fair. Also, this week we have Crawford versus Porter ordered by the WBO. Do you think Bud takes the fight? Do you think it happens? Can it happen? Apparently, it's meant to be one of the easier fights to make.
Yeah, I mean, why not? They need to make it. You know, I think there's not a lot of options for either guy, really, when you think about it, right? I mean, where's the other guy going? And that's not to say the other guy obviously isn't a guy people want to watch. It's just right now, I think that fight just makes a lot of sense for both guys. You know, well done by the WBO to mandate it, but hopefully they get it together and they do make this fight, because I think it makes sense for both guys, and I think the fans are also going to want to see it.
We know Crawford is one of those fighters that he's good at pretty much everything. He can go southpaw, he can go orthodox, he can punch, he can box, he's long range, he's good inside. But, and there is a but, Porter, I have not seen anybody beat him convinced. I've never just seen anyone enjoy a night with him.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yes, yeah. So, and this is kind of the kind of opponent who's, and Crawford has beaten good fighters. I mean, I'm not gonna say kill his level of opposition. You know, some people obviously say that, and he hasn't had the PBC level of opposition, but nonetheless, he's a top level fighter. Yeah. But this is the first really opponent that I can think of. We're still at a dangerous age because, you know, I think Brooke and Khan were kind of past it already. Who's still at a dangerous age and has been tested, had his mettle tested, and it's been at the top, you know, and we know what he does against other top fighters. Some of these other guys, we knew what they did against other top fighters, but they were kind of already shot when they fought Crawford. And then some of these other guys, they just had reputations, but really weren't battle tested. You know, like Usyk, you know, who had a reputation as an Eastern European, Lithuanian, but really we didn't know a lot about him. You know, we hadn't seen him again in big fights. Yeah. Porter's the kind of guy who is not shot, or at least I don't think he is. You know, and we've seen how he does against really top level opposition. So it's a fight where we get a lot of answers about Crawford as well. I mean, we already have a lot of answers about Crawford, but this one really gives us more answers.
Can you explain it though? As in, we know that styles make fights. A lot of people will just hear that saying, don't necessarily understand what it means. But Porter's style seems to be wrong for everyone.
Yeah.
What, like, stylistically, what does this fight look like to you?
I think Porter just runs at you like a rugby player. That's what I found when I fought him. You know, he basically just charges at you, and once he charges at you, that's it. I mean, you can't body him off you because he's strong, he's big. Yeah. I mean, at least if you're a guy who's come up from smaller weight classes, and Crawford has done that as well. One thing that does give me some faith in Crawford though is Jeff Horn was also that kind of guy. You know, he was also a body type of guy, physically bodying you type of guy, and would kind of offset you and frustrate you, and then in that midst of that frustration, he'd be hitting you as well and throw you off. He did it to Pacquiao, and Crawford really handled that very well and dominated that fight. So that's the one thing. If I can take one fight of Crawford's and say, you know what, why it gives me confidence that he would handle Porter, it's the Jeff Horn fight. But I do think Porter is better than Jeff Horn. But Jeff Horn is still a variation of Porter, you know, a lesser. He's Porter light, but just a little bit light, not that much.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. There's not any huge fights happening this weekend, so guys, go and enjoy the Olympics, do all of that. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxing podcast.
We are two of the most knowledgeable, two of the most charismatic, biggest personality guys in boxing, and we are two of the coolest cats talking about the sport today.